Shalom Alechem, Assalamu Alaikum. Welcome to First Chronicles chapter 9, in which there are 44 verses. Beginning in verse 1, we see continuous difference of enrollment versus genealogies. Now, to be fair, in the Hebrew, it means enroll on a genealogy, with the names of them that were carried away to Babylon for their transgression, versus who were carried away to Babylon for their transgression. So we can see the focus in the Septuagint is the people versus the kings, talking about the kings in the Masoretic. Verse 2, appointed ones versus Nethinims. Now, Nethinims means temple slaves who served the Levites in the sanctuary. Verse 18, gates. Gates versus porters. Sons of children. I think it's sons versus children. Verse 19, watches versus gates. Verse 20, head over them before Hashem, and these were with him, those mentioned in verse 18. Verses, ruler over them in time past, and Hashem was with him, talking about Phinehas. So these are the ones mentioned in verse 19 versus Hashem. Verse 21, keeper versus porter. Witness versus congregation. Verse 22, courts versus villages. Distribution versus genealogy. Established versus ordained. Verse 23, to keep watch versus by wards. So one is talking about the duties versus the organizational structure. Verse 24, the gates were toward the four winds versus in four quarters were the porters. Verse 25, weekly versus after 7 days. So weekly as in regularly, every 7 days, versus only one time after 7 days time. And this could be from time to time, but it could also be seldomly. We really don't know because it is more vague in the Masoretic. Verse 26, for 4 strong men have the charge of the gates, and the Levites were over the chambers, versus for these Levites, the 4 chief porters were in their set office and were over the chambers. So it's talking about 4 strong men and the Levites versus only the Levites who also happen to be the chief porters. Verse 27, an addition of, and they lodged round about the house of Elohim. There's an omission of the doors of the temple. So they didn't simply open something, it was the doors and specifically of the temple. Verse 29, furniture versus vessels. Holy vessels versus instruments of the sanctuary. Verse 30, an addition of sons of. Verse 31, an omission of the sacrifices of meat offering belonging to the high priest. So very specific details provided, but not included in the Masoretic. Verse 32, Benaiah versus and other of their brethren. So we have this individual named Benaiah who is completely omitted from the record. Verse 33, to whom were established daily courses, versus who remaining in the chambers were free. So one is saying they're free to do what they want. The other one is saying, in the Septuagint anyway, it's saying that this is the order of organizational structure, how they would have their daily courses, their daily order, their daily order of serving. From a day-to-day pattern, they would have a different Levite serving according to their schedule. Verse 37, and his brother versus Ahio. Verse 44, this is a continuous difference because this was also noticed in the previous chapter. It mentions Esrikam, his firstborn, versus Bocheru. Interestingly, Bocheru was included as a son of Azel, but when they did that, they completely removed from the record Asa was removed and was omitted from the Masoretic. So that's all for this chapter. Thank you very much for your time. Till next time, I bid you all Shalom Aleichem, Assalamu Alaikum, Irini Mazisu, Pax Vobiscum. Peace be unto you and Maranatha.